Hello, welcome to this week's installment of Film 101. So today we're talking about editing, which is exciting for all kinds of reasons. I just want to go over the assignment really quickly. So we're watching X2 or Strait of Crocodiles. You can watch either of them. You get extra credit if you watch both and then write a comparison statement or a comparison, just a few paragraphs, comparing the editing techniques and just how they're different. They're really different, right? One is a stop motion animation, the other is a very commercial genre film, and so you should have a lot to say about the differences. I would encourage you to talk about similarities if you can. I just really quickly want to talk about X2 as an example of, because it's kind of one of the first big Hollywood pictures that we've had. Definitely one of the more modern ones. There was Juno, and we did watch Citizen Kane, but it's not a typical thing that you would see in a film class. I love the movie. I love it a lot. I am so thrilled with what it does narratively, and how it constructs its characters, and how it portrays its ideologies and messages. It's very clearly a film about homosexuality, and that's just amazing that you can have something that is so clearly about some kind of subversive cultural element that is in such a highly populist form. It's just fascinating and amazing. You can argue that the comics themselves were always about maligned groups and kind of discovering, oh no, I'm a mutant. And these obviously the metaphor for being gay is there. But Bryan Singer has brought that out. So what does that have to do with editing? Why would I choose that for editing? One, I think that John Ottman is a very interesting editing figure, and Bryan Singer, I think, is an interesting figure in how he engages with editing. First of all, because John Ottman is always the composer as well as the editor, so that is a really interesting link to me, that the editor and the music come from the same source. And I think you definitely can see that in the usage of the score. A. B, the way that Ottman edits is harder to distinguish, and I think that it's not a salient technique in that it's not very flashy, very often what will happen in scenes that Ottman and Singer construct is that you will start with a closer medium and carry a lot of the scene that way, and only in the middle of the scene will you kind of go back to a wide. There's a lot of coverage in a Hollywood production of this kind. There's a lot of coverage, meaning there's a lot of different angles and a lot of different shots, and the way that you have a lot more options, a lot of pieces in constructing these performances. And you'll carry it in a medium like right now, or in a close like right now, and then for you to go back to a wide in the middle of the scene is something that Ottman does that I think is an interesting technique working within a genre system. So I want us to be looking at editing on a micro level, meaning things like how fast are the cuts, how we go from this cut to this cut, what images do we go from this to this about. And so much of the way we talk about editing has to do with the Kuleshov effect, something like that, which is really an important thing for us to be thinking about. It's covered very clearly in the reading. It's a thing that you should be highly conversant in, not just versed, but conversant in. So there's stuff like the Kuleshov effect, and we've got Eisenstein. And the way that we talk about Eisenstein is important, that we have two images that come right up next to each other, and it creates new meaning. And the book describes it as, this is the epitome of art. If it doesn't do that, then it's not artful editing. I would say that's a little simple-minded. That's a little small-minded. But if it's not that, then it's not art. That's not. Let's not limit ourselves that much. But that is a great way for the art of an editor to come across, is the image of this and the image of this, and bring it out. So very often we reference things like 2001 and graphic matching, things like that. You have an image, one image, another image, they're on the same part of the screen from one edit to the next, and that this is the same thing, or this is a comparison. It's kind of small level graphic matching. I feel like we've evolved quite a bit in our ability to comprehend and synthesize poetry beyond simple this equals this. Very, very base elementary math of editing to that. And I think we've evolved our culture, our digital, our ability to process visual information so much greater now than at any other time in history, I think. So this is a big thing. Our attention spans are smaller, but our ability to process information visually is just out of this world right now. Okay, so Ottman doesn't really employ artful editing. So does that mean he's not an artist? Well, I don't feel a need to engage in that kind of comparison. But I that's one reason why I have us watch Strait of Crocodiles, because it is entirely just editing, because every single shot is a still. So it's an animation film, and it's just stop motion animation. It's very short. It's 20 minutes. Would not be difficult to watch both at all. Would not be time consuming. You've got a Hollywood blockbuster, and then you've got a 20-minute experimental animation film that is just really thrilling to me. The Brothers Quay. I taught a class on their films. One of the very first places I ever taught, and then I lived in Poland for many years, and one of the times I was there, I just ran into them on the bus. They're American, but they happen to be in Poland for this festival, and I was a translator for them. And it was nice to be able to say, I taught a class on your films. They've been kind to me, but it was nice because this film that we're watching comes from a really important work about a Jewish Polish author. There's no text. It's just images and sound, and what a different experience that is, because it's just these images pushed right up next to each other, and a lot of what we will get will not actually be a story. It'll be hard to get that, but it's a work made from a work of fiction, from prose. It's just words. So it's very interesting to see that adaptation in and of itself. But the fact that it is, it's just images bumped up next to each other. This leads me to why I've chosen these two films. We can view editing on a micro level, such as, the images bumped up right next to each other, something like that. You have an image of someone, and then looking at something, and you have a piece of fruit back to them, and even if there's no images on their face, simply the fact that no expression on their face, you think that they're going to be salivating over this orange, because you go back and forth between the person looking and the orange, looking orange, and you create this emotion through the editing. That's really beautiful. We've evolved beyond that, I think. But it's a really powerful tool that is still underutilized. So there's a micro level of that. There's also things like graphic matching, moving from one physical place to another physical place. This conversation edited with this conversation, going back and forth. But then on a macro level, there's really powerful things that also happen. On a macro level, you have something like what parts of the story are cut out, what scenes are deleted, what ideas do we have about each character, and everything can be changed in the editor's hand, completely changed in the editor's hand. Examples of this. We've got a filmmaker who unfortunately this year passed away. It was a very, very sad thing for me. His name is Jacques Rivette, part of the New Wave, French New Wave. And he, for instance, made a film called Out One. And Out One Spectre is is it 12 hours? Jeez, I don't know. It's a very long film. And then there's another version of the film called just Out One, or is it Spectre's the short one? My goodness, how silly. But it's something like 6-7 hours in comparison to the 12 hours. That's a huge difference. It's the same film, just reimagined in a different way. He also uses different takes and creates different ideas. Same characters, but they're portrayed entirely differently. He's known for doing this. He did this in another film called La Belle Noiseuse, and he remade it, and I think it was called Divermento. Jeez, I've even got them on the shelf ahead of me somewhere. But the point is that we've got this one is a 4.5 hour film, and then another one is 2.5 hours. It's the exact same footage, but it's just edited into a different thing. Is one just shorter? No. The glances, the characters are completely redefined, and so even though it's all the same footage, in one it's an alternate take, and Emmanuel Béart is the actress in the film, the main actress in the film, and in one version she is very aggressive in the way that she talks to this other character. In another, she's completely timid and completely a victim. And the whole film changes as the characters are reconstructed just by simple glances, by simple editing techniques. The characters, the performances are really created a lot of times in the edit. What do we put next to what? So there's that element of the editing, and what things are included from the characters, from the story, from all of it. And these choices are art. What do you include? This film I just finished. I have an actress who she needed to leave right then, and we didn't have time for another take. And she kind of was flippant in the way that she reacted to this one character. And if I include her being flippant, it's a completely different meaning, and the film changes radically than if she is soft as we intended. So we've had to take other glances from other moments and other sounds from when we're on this other shot and things like that. And by doing that, we've changed the film radically by making her sound soft when really we never got her to be soft. That just didn't happen. So we've had to construct it through other things and take audio from other scenes and things like that. It's been a struggle, but we needed to get it. We didn't have time to get her reaction. Okay, so this is a big thing. Things you should know from the reading if you don't. Know what the Kuleshov effect is. Know the examples that are talked about. The videos are very comprehensive from the book, and I highly recommend you engage with them. Make sure that you understand what the 180-degree rule is. If someone's on this side of the frame and you're shooting at them, the camera's facing them, then when you go around, they need to be on that same side of the frame. Otherwise, we get really confused. We get really mixed up. It's a actually very difficult thing to do when you're on set, especially when you've got multiple angles and the action's moving all the time. So we've got some elements that you should know. The axis of what's going on. Whatever the action is, it moves along an axis, a line. It's an invisible line. And whatever that is, wherever the camera is placed, it needs to stay on the same side of that axis, or we will not, the people will be graphically switched on the other side. There are fixes, ways to get around it in the edit, but it's very, very difficult, especially when the axis is moving in relation to the camera and things like this. These are things you really should be aware of. The filmmaker, the director often makes those decisions, but the editor is the one who does it and makes it, chooses when and where. I mean, he gets it done. he or she gets it done. Okay, so I hope that it's clear. You can write a few paragraphs about comparing these two films. And I think the book does a really good job of just explaining, especially with these videos, what the techniques are. Just make sure you know those key terms. Keep turning in your assignments, and we'll talk soon.